My name is Sam, short for Samuel. I am mixed race thanks to my ancestors. My grandfather was black and my grandmother was of Asian descent. My father was quite dark-skinned, and so was I. To complete the interracial picture, my mom was Mexican. I will say that she was and remains a beautiful woman. Maybe that's why I look so good, just kidding. My story begins with me and my best friend Bill. He's a white guy, or to be politically correct, Caucasian. We were once best friends, but that's not the case anymore. We separated over a year ago while we were still in college. We met in elementary school and spent almost all our time together. We always tried to outdo each other. In sports, he was usually one step behind me. This always made him angry. We both ended up playing football in college. He was angry when I got a full scholarship and he only got a partial one. He said it was because I was mixed race and his family had money. It was never worth arguing with him when he brought up the issue of race. As for the money, he was right. His family was rich. They owned a packaging business. They have packaged well-known brands for many companies. His mother inherited the business from her father. She was the president of the company and controlled most of the finances. Bill's father was an outside salesman for the company. He also served as vice president. My family was middle class. His father worked as an insurance agent and his mother worked in a women's fashion store. Bill's mother shopped at the store where my mother worked, so they knew each other. As I already mentioned, Bill always tried to surpass me in everything. He would brag when he beat me at something, which didn't happen often. The only time it bothered me was when we were dating different girls. In high school, some girls said they couldn't date me because of my race, so when Bill went on dates with them, he always bragged about it. When we went to college, everything changed. The girls didn't have parents to tell them who they could and couldn't date. I dated a lot of girls. We both dated the same girls. We had an agreement that if one of us became seriously interested in a girl, the other would stay away from her. Although we both played football, I was also an excellent student. I wanted to become a certified public accountant. Bill just wanted to get a degree in business. He said he knew he would work in the family business, so he didn't have to try too hard. When we returned home after our third year, Bill's mom told me that she would have a position in the office for me after I graduated from college. Next year, they will be expanding their business by adding another building. She hoped that I would be in charge of accounting for both offices. I hugged her and thanked her. I told Bill that his mother had offered me a job after graduation. He said that I would probably work for him. He was going to manage a new warehouse. I couldn't tell him that I would be in the office and that he would most likely report to me. I decided to just wait and see what happens. In my fourth year, I met a woman named Sasha. She, like me, was of mixed blood. So beautiful, olive green. I fell in love with her pretty quickly. When I told Bill about her, I reminded him of our agreement and asked him to stay away from her. At that time, he was dating a beautiful girl named Judy, but Sasha was special in appearance. She had this exotic and mysterious look. I was very attracted to her and thought we could have a future together. I haven't dated anyone else. I didn't need another one because I had Sasha. I was named man of the match twice during the season. Of course, Bill was not named, and he was angry with me instead of being happy for me as a friend. Before Christmas break, I got all A's on my report card and made the dean's list. On New Year's Day, we were going to a party with Bill and Judy. Not long after we arrived, Judy said she wasn't feeling well and wanted to go home. Since I was driving, Bill asked me to take her home. I offered him my keys, but he said he had already drunk too much. Judy apologized to me and said she shouldn't have come, but Bill told her to try. I told her that nothing could be done if she was sick and that I would take her home. I asked Bill to look after Sasha while I was gone. A lot of guys would probably want to hit on her. I walked Judy to the car and drove her home. I walked her to the door to make sure she was okay. "Thanks, Sam, you're a good friend." I kissed her on the cheek, wished her a happy new year, and hoped she would get better soon, then headed back to the party. The party was held in a huge house, and there were probably hundreds of people throughout the area, both inside and outside the house. I kept looking for Bill and Sasha and couldn't find them. One girl told me that she thought she saw them coming upstairs. I couldn't understand why they could go there. There were mostly bedrooms, another living room, and a bathroom. I started checking different rooms, and when I opened one of the bedrooms, I saw Bill and Sasha. I couldn't believe it. He knew how I felt about her, and what about our agreement? At first, they didn't even notice that I was in the room. The only source of light was the night light next to the bed. Bill looked at me and grinned. "Sorry, old friend, but I just needed to check what you said." I didn't know what to do. Fight with Bill over her. You asshole. You knew how I felt about her, but you did it anyway. Someday, somehow, I'll get even with you. You can have this slut for yourself. I don't want anything more to do with her or you. What a bastard he is. I left the house and the party just as the clock struck midnight, and everyone was shouting, "Happy New Year." It wasn't my lucky New Year when I left the area. The next morning, Sasha tried to call me half a dozen times, each time leaving an apology message on my answering machine. Finally, I answered. "I just have one question. Why the hell did you let him seduce you? I thought you and I had something special." "Bill told me you and he switched partners a lot. He said you're probably with Judy now. I didn't know he was lying until it was all over." "Well, I don't want anything more to do with you. I'm sorry I wasted my time on you. I hope you and Bill can be happy together." I just hung up. Later that day, Judy called me. She said she heard what happened and it was her fault. If she hadn't gotten sick, I would have stayed at the party. "Judy, Bill has been trying to get revenge on me his entire life. They both knew what they were doing. If it hadn't happened last night, he would have done it another time. I'm glad I found out the truth about her before it was too late." Judy and I talked some more, and she said she had broken up with Bill. She didn't want a guy who would do that to a friend. She also said that if I ever wanted to get revenge by sleeping with her, she wouldn't mind. I saw Bill at training. Thank God we only had one game left. One time he came up to me with a grin. I spoke quickly. "Get away from me. Come to me, and I'll hurt you so much that it will still hurt next Tuesday. Take your friendship and your new girlfriend and shove them up your ass." Bill's smile quickly disappeared. He knew I wasn't joking. This time he realized that he had gone too far. One evening, there was a knock on my door, and when I opened it, Judy was standing there. She was holding a 6-pack of beer. "Hey, stranger, want a beer and some fun?" Almost 2 months have passed since I broke up with Sasha. I accepted Judy's offer. After spending the night together, I made us breakfast. We both knew we wouldn't be a couple. Easter was approaching, and I was planning to go home. I heard that Bill and Sasha are going to get married. Of course, I didn't receive an invitation, but I still wouldn't go. I thought about Mrs. Abel, Bill's mother. She had promised me a position at her firm, but now that Bill and I were no longer friends, I was unsure of my future. I went to the fashion store where my mother worked, and while I was there, Mrs. Abel came in to pick up the dress she had ordered for Bill's wedding. She looked as beautiful as always. "Samuel, so good to see you. I've been wanting to talk to you for a long time. If you have a few minutes, we can have a cup of coffee or tea." Mom told Mrs. Abel she was glad to see her and said she would see me later at home as she had customers to attend to. Mrs. Riggs Abel and I went to a nearby cafe and got drinks and talked. "What's wrong, Mrs. Oris Abel? I wanted to talk to you too. I think you know that Bill and I are no longer friends. I would appreciate it if you could tell me if the position is still on the table." Accountant: "Samuel, we have a little problem. I can't let you and Bill be on bad terms. It will create a bad work environment, even if you don't see each other every day. What caused your friendship to end?" "He didn't tell you. Sasha, his future wife, was my girlfriend. He deceived her and seduced her." "I thought you both dated the same girls a lot. Was it different?" I told him that I really cared about her and thought that she might be the one. We agreed that if one of us became seriously interested in a girl, The other would stay away from her. He knew that I was not indifferent to her. I told him about it, but he still violated our agreement. I'm sorry, Samuel, but it's over now. Bill and Sasha are getting married, and I really want you to work for me. I suggest you put aside old grudges and come to the wedding. You two don't have to be close friends, but I want you to be polite to each other. Now everything depends on you. I smiled a little. Mrs. Abel, I have no problem being polite to both of them, but I wasn't invited to the wedding. They might not like it if I came. Don't worry about it. I'm paying for the wedding and inviting you, and I'll let Bill know I invited you. Thank you for rising above that. No wonder I've always loved you, she said with a smile and hugged me as we got up. I walked into the church lobby and Bill stood there in his tuxedo. So, I see you came. Mom said she invited you. Why are you here? Bill asked. I'm here because your mom asked me to come. Look, I know we're not friends anymore and I don't intend to be, but your mom offered me a job after graduation and I want to take it. She's worried that our enemies' relationships can interfere with business. I promised her that I would not quarrel with you and would always be polite. What about Sasha and your desire to take revenge on me? I know better than anyone how you can hold a grudge, Bill replied. I swear to you before God that I will never do anything to harm your marriage with Sasha. I understand that even if you violated our agreement, Sasha also made her choice. She chose you, and I will respect that. We won't be close friends, but that doesn't mean we can't be polite to each other. I held out my hand for Bill to shake, and he did so reluctantly. I entered the church and sat in the back. I didn't know most of the people there, but I recognized a few and greeted them. I knew Bill didn't trust me or believe me when I said I wouldn't come between him and Sasha. I really meant it, but that didn't mean I wasn't planning on getting back at him somehow. After the wedding, I walked through the greeting line. I said hi to Mr. and Mrs. Abel, shook Tom's hand, and hugged Mary, kissing her lightly on the cheek. I also shook hands with Sasha's parents. I doubt they knew who I was. When I approached Sasha, she looked nervous and her pregnancy was starting to show, but she was still a very beautiful woman. I congratulated her and Bill, kissed her lightly on the cheek, and shook Bill's hand. He didn't even smile at me. I knew he was worried that I was going to ruin his marriage. He shouldn't have worried because I didn't want anything to do with Sasha and her cheating. At the reception, I sat with several acquaintances. I drank a few beers and danced with a few women. There was a lot of talk about Bill marrying a mixed-race woman and that she was also pregnant. I was about to leave when Mrs. Abel asked me to dance. I took her to the dance floor and put my hand on her bare back, keeping some distance from her. Come on, Samuel, I won't break. You can hold me a little closer, Mrs. Abel said and smiled at me. She told me that the next song will be where the bride dances with all the men and the groom dances with the women. They had a jar to collect money for dancing with couples. It was an old tradition. I also took part and danced with Sasha. I couldn't help but notice that Bill was watching us, even though he was dancing with other women. Sorry, Sam, Sasha said. Someday I would like to talk to you and explain why I did what I did. I'm so sorry I hurt you. You deserved better. There's no need to explain anything to me. It's over. You chose the one you want to be with. Before she could say anything else, another man walked up and started dancing with her. I just wished her and Bill all the best. After that, I went home. It hurted me. I didn't know if it was more because of the way she did it or because I actually had feelings for her. All I knew was that it was over. I continued to live my life. I arrived at the packing house on time, dressed in a suit and tie. I had to go to the HR department for an interview and instructions. According to Mrs. Abel, it was just a formality, but I had paperwork to fill out. I met Mr. Henderson, and he gave me paperwork and explained my benefits and salary. I was surprised that my salary was so low. I knew I could earn a lot more if I went looking for a job. We need to explain a little about the business. As I already mentioned, they pack goods for any customer from any location. They mostly worked with large manufacturers who found it cheaper to outsource their packaging needs. My father told me that when Mary Abel's father owned the business, it was a sweatshop with very low wages and no benefits. After Mary took over, she tried to improve the work environment. Later, after I saw the payroll, actually part of my job was keeping payroll, I noticed that hourly workers were making $8 an hour in the beginning. Every 6 months, their wages increased by 50 cents until they reached a maximum of $11 an hour. She added paid holidays and offered to pay for half of their health insurance through a group program for those who wanted it. The business employed between 80 and 100 hourly workers depending on the season, with the addition of a new warehouse that would employ an additional 25 full-time people. She really tried to do everything right. This made me respect her even more. Employees with a fixed salary received a certain amount. The 4 salespeople were making $3,000 a month, except her husband Tom, who was making $5,000 a month because he was vice president, but that was just a position. He participated in the meetings, but Mary made all the major decisions. After talking to Mr. Bazasich Anderson, he told me that Mrs. Abel wanted to talk to me. I went to her office. The secretary asked me to sit down. She said Mrs. Abel would see me in a few minutes. "Hey, Samuel, come in. Jennifer, please don't distract us," Mary said. We walked into her office, and she asked me to close the door and sit down. "You look very good, Samuel. Welcome to Abel's Packaging. I know you're a little disappointed with your starting salary. I tried to give you the best I could. As you'll know, Ethel makes $4,000 a month. By the way, please don't discuss our financial situation, including salaries, with anyone. That's why you had to sign a confidentiality agreement. After Ethel retires later this year, I was hoping to increase your salary to $5,000 a month. I hope you can find ways to increase our profits. I really want you to stay, but if you want to look for a job somewhere else, I understand." "Mrs. Abel," she stopped me. "Samuel, please call me Mary, except in large meetings. I feel old when you call me Mrs. Abel." I smiled. Mary, you don't look old at all. Sorry, maybe that's a little inappropriate." "That sounds like a compliment, Samuel. I actually like it," she smiled. "As for the salary, yes, I expected more, but I always wanted to work for you. You are one of my favorite people. Let's take one day at a time, and I will try to find some loopholes, and maybe everything will work out. I just want to thank you for the opportunity to show what I can do." I was really glad that she gave me a chance and freedom to work. It was a good starting point, and who knows what will happen next. Now I am happy and satisfied with my position. In addition, in a few months, I will become a chief accountant with a significant increase in salary. She extended her hand to shake my hand. "No hugging in the office," she laughed. I shook her hand and headed to my office to meet Ethel. Ethel turned out to be a wonderful woman. She was old enough to be my grandmother and treated me like her grandson. She was a pleasure to work with and explained to me that she just couldn't handle computers. I smiled at her and told her that we would work on all the latest information together. I saw that she would be missed. She was just a nice older woman who I felt was completely reliable and dedicated to her job. She said she would be glad to finally retire and see her children and grandchildren more often. Over the next few months, she showed me all the important information that I needed to load into the computer. I worked with Ethel every day for 4 hours. After that, I would go to my office and continue to download the necessary information, sometimes working 12 hours a day. I found myself a nice apartment not far from work. It had a large bedroom, living room, and kitchen. I enjoyed the outdoor pool and spa, which I visited frequently. I also met several women who were fun to hang out with. I didn't date women at work. I just decided it would be hard, and there was no one there that I was serious about. I think Sasha's betrayal largely led to the fact that I stopped trusting women. I really enjoyed my job, and most people treated me well. Since I worked in the main office, they must have thought that I was an important person. I forgot to mention that Bill started working at the new warehouse as an assistant manager. He was annoyed to learn that he would be paid $11 an hour, but his mother said that he needed to learn all the positions before she could pay him more. Of course, I knew she cared about him on a personal level. He lived in a good home, and his mother undoubtedly provided him with the means to care for his wife and child. He just didn't get the money he expected. I saw him from time to time, but rarely spoke to him, but I was polite, as promised. Ethel told me that she had always thought of him as a spoiled child since birth. She also said it was partly her fault. Sasha gave birth to a child, and of course, it was a child of mixed race, but very beautiful. Tom was unhappy that his son Bill was marrying a mixed-race woman, but Mary told him not to cause problems. It was Bill's choice, not his. I often ate lunch in the cafeteria at work, and Mary often confided her thoughts to me. After the baby was born, she told me that she had always thought about having another child. She wanted a daughter, but now she might be too old for that, and besides, her relationship with Tom was not the best. Later, when I spoke with Ethel, she was my source of gossip. I learned that Tom and Mary were only married on paper. They had very little in common except showmanship and business events. Ethel told me that they separated many years ago when she took over the business. He thought he would get 50% of the business, but Mary's father said he was too much of a scoundrel. He was a good salesman, but he also cheated with every woman who would let him. Why does she stay with him? I asked Ethel. She has no other love interests other than the business. He knows that if he leaves, he might end up with nothing. The business is a corporation, and they also had a prenuptial agreement, Ethel said. She's such a beautiful woman with a great personality. I can't understand why anyone wouldn't want to be with her. I laughed when I told Ethel this. Believe me, I've seen many men try and fail, but if she had affairs, she hid them well, Ethel replied. I never liked her husband Tom. To me, he was always a flirt with women and married Mary in the hope of one day taking over the business. I was glad when she realized what a rat he was. What about her son Bill? Do you like him? I asked. Ethel laughed. I know all about how you and Bill tried to outdo each other our whole lives. I think you came out ahead here. You got a good education, and he got a woman who married him for the money she thought he had. I don't understand, I said to Ethel. Sasha thought Bill had money. He was always bragging about how he would own this business one day. If he had tried to study harder instead of trying to impress girls, he could have helped himself a lot more. If I knew Mary, who would have handed over this business, this man must be very smart and have a lot of common sense. This business is her baby, and she won't give it to Tom, Bill, or anyone else who doesn't love it as much as she does. Wow, I learned from Ethel the real reason why Sasha chose Bill. Now I feel much better. I didn't lose Sasha because of a better person, but because of someone who seemed richer. I would never want a woman like that. I think Ethel could see that I was happier. With a few months until retirement, I will miss this old lady. I adored her. After the baby was born, Mary seemed relieved that it was all over. She admitted to me that Bill did a DNA test to make sure the baby was his. What a way to start a marriage. We had a going-away party for Ethel, and everyone said they would miss her. I really grew to love her, and she said that if I ever had a problem, I could always call her. We spoke privately, and she told me more about the business and Tom and Mary. I laughed when Ethel said, if I were 40 years younger, I would get involved with you. If you were 40 years younger, I would let you do it. I hugged her and kissed her on the cheek. Mary stood to the side and, I think, watched me and Ethel. Later, I heard Ethel tell Mary, don't lose him, he's a good guy. I was pleased when I saw Mary smile at Ethel and say, I don't plan on losing him. It really lifted my spirits. The next week, I started working on the programs I had developed. I found a few ideas that I wanted to share with Mary. I showed her some ways to save money, and she was very pleased. She asked me to start attending board meetings every Monday. During the week, I shared ideas with her, and on Mondays, I explained them to the board of directors. Most of them were accepted. Tom was one of the few who tried to criticize my ideas, but he was quickly discouraged by other board members who came to my defense. Let me give you one example of my ideas. I suggested that instead of paying the sellers $3,000 a month, I would guarantee them $500 a month and give them a percentage of their sales. This way, those who bring in more income will be rewarded for their efforts. After the idea was presented to the salespeople, one of them quit. When we checked his sales history, it turned out that he rarely earned his salary. His territory was distributed among other sellers. Over the next few months, sellers began to generate more income. They realized that their income was limited only by how much time they were willing to spend. Tom kept his territory and his salary of $5,000 a month. He was also given $1,000 a month for expenses. Other sellers received $500 a month unless they showed a special reason for the additional expense. Mary always made the final decision. I had been working there for almost 5 months when Christmas came. I reviewed the books and explained to Mary that the business could afford small bonuses or gifts for each employee. This has never been done before. After showing the board where the money would come from, everyone except Tom agreed it was a good idea. Tom thought this would set a bad precedent. Mary said she thought employees would be more appreciative than unhappy. She gave each employee a check for $100 and also a turkey. It was surprising how well the staff responded. As word spread, productivity seemed to increase. Mary was very pleased, and that was enough for me. We closed for 2 days over Christmas. Mary hugged me and wished me a Merry Christmas. I thought hugging was illegal at work, I said. I'll make an exception for you, said Mary. We're lucky to have you with us. I gave the turkey to my mom and went to her house for Christmas. I had a great time with my family, but I also missed Mary's smile in the morning or having lunch with her, even if it was discussing business. As for Bill and Sasha, I tried to stay away from them as much as possible. The only time I talked about them was when Mary brought up the topic or mentioned the baby. After all, it was her grandson. New Year was approaching and most of the people from our office were going to a party. I wasn't going to go because exactly a year ago, I caught Bill and Sasha together. Bad memories. Mary practically begged me to come. I told her that I didn't have a partner, and she said that she would dance with me. She smiled when she said this. Finally, I agreed to go. The party was held at a Holiday Inn, and some people made reservations for the night. I decided that I would just go home. It was a good party with lots of food and drinks. I knew I drank a little more than I should have since I was driving and ended up switching to soda. I danced with all the girls from the office, and of course with Mary. I saw her dance with Tom a couple of times, and then he started his usual flirting and danced with all the women at the party. It didn't take a rocket scientist to see that he groped every woman who would let him. Mary acted like she didn't notice, but I was sure she saw it. I must have danced slowly with her 4 times. I was sitting at the table when Sasha asked me to dance. I have to admit, she did look good. She wore a tight dress that emphasized her figure. "So, Sam, will you dance with me?" she asked. "If that suits Bill, I don't want to mess with his woman," I replied. We started dancing, and it was a very slow dance. I tried to keep her at a distance, but she pressed herself closer to me. She drank too much and started talking to me. I just listened. "Sam, I'm sorry for what I did to you. I thought Bill would run this business, and he kept telling me that you would work for him. I'm so sorry." "Enough. You made your choice. You made your bed, and now you sleep in it." At that moment, Bill came up and asked what we were talking about. "Just about you and your baby. Well, here's your wife. I hope you have a happy life together." It was midnight, and everyone started kissing. I kissed every woman except Sasha and Mary. I wasn't sure if I could handle kissing Mary. I went to get my coat when Tom came up to me. "Are you leaving already, Sam?" "Yes, I've already had my fill. See you on Monday. Happy New Year, Tom." "Sam, can you do me a big favor?" "Of course, if I can," I replied. "Mary has had too much to drink and isn't feeling well. She wants to go home. Can you take her for me?" I couldn't believe it. I was going to leave to avoid Mary, and now her husband is asking me to take her home. Didn't you book a room here for the night? I asked. Yes, but Mary wants to sleep in her own bed. There's no point in arguing with her. I'd ask Bill, but he's already had too much to drink to drive. Please, I don't want to leave. For me, the party is just getting started. I agreed and went to get Mary's coat. She said goodbye to Tom and said that she would see him in the morning. She kissed him on the cheek and we walked out to my car. She didn't seem that drunk to me. Thanks for taking me home, Samuel. I don't like sleeping in hotels with Tom. Even though we have separate beds, he snores. Besides, he's already been eyeing a few girls. Doesn't it bother you that he's with other women? I asked. It used to bother me, but I've lost all love for him. If he wasn't such a good salesman, I would have fired him, she said with a smile. When we arrived at her house, I opened the door and helped her out. I hugged her and walked her to the door. On my way back, I decided to go to a new cafe that had recently opened in the city center. The cafe was cozy and bright, with a pleasant atmosphere and the aroma of fresh baked goods in the air. I ordered myself a cup of coffee and a slice of chocolate cake and sat down at a table by the window to relax a bit and enjoy the evening. Suddenly, I noticed a beautiful girl sitting at the next table reading a book. She was so immersed in reading that she did not notice anything around her. I could not take my eyes off her beautiful, blonde hair, which fell in soft waves on her shoulders, and from her kind, thoughtful eyes. I felt like I had to go up to her and talk. Having gathered my courage, I walked up to her table and asked with a smile, "Hello, I'm Samuel. Can I sit with you? What kind of book do you have that is so interesting?" The girl looked up and answered with a smile. "Hello, I'm Emily. Of course, have a seat. This is a novel that I really like." From that moment on, our conversation flowed easily and naturally. We talked about everything in the world, about books, about music, about life, and about dreams. I felt like I had found a kindred spirit. We exchanged phone numbers and agreed to meet again. A month passed, then two. Emily and I met more and more often, spending every free moment together. We walked around the city, went to the cinema, and enjoyed nature in the park. Emily worked in the library, and we often discussed the books she recommended that I read. The more time we spent together, the stronger our feelings for each other became. It didn't take long for me to realize that I had fallen in love with Emily. She became everything to me, my best friend, my support, and my inspiration. Emily felt the same. She had never met someone as kind, honest, and caring as me, or so she said. Christmas was approaching, and I decided it was time to take an important step in our relationship. I wanted to propose to Emily and ask her to become my wife. I thought for a long time about how best to do this, and finally came up with the perfect plan. On Christmas evening, I invited Emily to my home. I decorated the house with garlands, candles, and fir branches, creating a magical holiday atmosphere. Emily was delighted with these decorations. We prepared dinner together and sat down at the table, enjoying the warmth and comfort. After dinner, I suggested that Emily go outside and look at the stars. The night was clear and cold, but the sky was strewn with bright stars. We went out onto the porch, and I, holding Emily's hand, said, "Emily, I know that we have only known each other for a year, but during this time I realized that I cannot imagine my life without you. You make me happy, and I want to spend my whole life with you. Will you marry me?" Emily, with a smile and tears in her eyes, replied, "Yes, Samuel, I will marry you. I love you." We hugged and kissed, feeling like the happiest people in the world. Our wedding became one of the brightest and most unforgettable moments in our lives. Emily and I prepared for this event for a long time, trying to take into account every little detail to make this day special not only for us, but also for our loved ones and friends. We chose a spring day for the wedding, when nature woke up after winter hibernation, and everything around was blooming and green. The ceremony was scheduled for noon, and the morning began with excitement and preparation. Our friends and relatives arrived early to help with the organization and preparation of the place. We chose a small country house with a beautiful garden for the ceremony. This place was ideal for our wedding, Flowers bloomed around, birds sang, and there was an atmosphere of peace and comfort. The garden was decorated with garlands of white and pink flowers, balloons, and delicate glowing lights. From the very morning, I was in the company of my friends and witnesses. We laughed, remembered funny stories, and encouraged each other. I was overcome with a feeling of excitement and joy at the same time. My suit was classic, but with a modern twist: a navy blue jacket, white shirt, and bow tie. I knew Emily had chosen something special for our wedding, but I had no idea how beautiful it would be. Emily got ready in the house with her friends and relatives. Her dress was simply gorgeous, light and airy, with lace inserts and a long train. Her hair was styled in soft curls, and she wore a thin crowning veil on her head. When I first saw her in this dress, it took my breath away. She was a real princess. The ceremony started on time. The guests gathered in the garden, sitting on beautifully decorated chairs. A beautiful melody played in the background as Emily appeared, accompanied by her father. I stood at the altar and could not take my eyes off my bride. At that moment, all worries disappeared, and I felt only joy and love. When Emily approached me, her father handed her to me, and we held hands. The ceremony was officiated by a friend of ours who had known both of us since childhood. He spoke sincere and touching words about love, loyalty, and support. We exchanged vows that we wrote ourselves. I promised to love and support Emily, be there for her through thick and thin, and take care of her throughout her life. Emily, in turn, promised to be my support, my friend, and my inspiration. After the official part of the ceremony, we went for a photo session in the garden. The photographer took many pictures, capturing our happy moments. We laughed, hugged, and kissed, enjoying every second of this magical day. Then we returned to the guests, and the festive part of the wedding began. The garden was set with beautiful tables with snow-white tablecloths and elegant table settings. The dishes we chose for our holiday dinner were varied and delicious. We tried to take into account the preferences of each guest, so that no one remains indifferent. The newlyweds' first dance was one of the most touching moments of the evening. We chose a special song for this that had special meaning to us. When the tune started playing, we went out onto the dance floor, and I hugged Emily, feeling her warmth and closeness. We danced without taking our eyes off each other, and the whole world seemed distant and unimportant to us. After our dance, guests joined us. Music was playing, people were laughing and dancing. The atmosphere was filled with joy and fun. We spent the evening surrounded by the love and support of our loved ones. Toasts were made, warm words were said, and gifts were given. Each of the guests contributed to this unforgettable day, and we felt truly happy. Late in the evening, when the sky became filled with stars, we set off fireworks. It was an amazing sight. Bright lights soared into the sky, illuminating it with colorful flashes. We stood hugging and looked at this magic, feeling that our life was just beginning. Our wedding was perfect. This day became the beginning of our new life, full of love, happiness, and hopes for the future. We knew that many wonderful moments awaited us ahead, and we were ready to meet them together, hand in hand. In April, Emily found out she was pregnant. I was overjoyed when she told me this news. We both dreamed of having a child and were ready to become parents. We named our daughter Sophia. Emily and I were delighted to watch our daughter grow and develop. We felt that our family was now complete. The three of us lived happily, enjoying every moment of our lives. Every day started with smiles and kisses. Emily and I tried to do everything we could to make our little family happy. We walked together in the park, rode bicycles, and had picnics in nature. At such moments, we felt that we were the happiest family in the world. Bill told Mary he could no longer work for her and found another job at a large automobile company as their assistant warehouse manager. He even made more money than in our business. What he didn't know was that Mary called the HR manager at another corporation and pulled a few strings to get Bill the job. The truth is that Bill was a smart man when he was at his best, and he had a degree in economics. When Sophia turned 3 years old, we decided to organize an unforgettable birthday for her. We invited all her little friends and had a party in the garden. There were lots of games, treats, and of course, a big cake. Sophia was delighted and did not stop laughing all day. This holiday became a real fairy tale for her. As the years passed, our family continued to grow and develop. Emily and I were grateful for every moment we had together. We supported each other in difficult times and enjoyed every new day. Our love only became stronger, and our family became more united. When Sophia started school, Emily and I realized how quickly time flies. Our little girl was growing up, and we tried to enjoy every moment of her childhood. We often remembered how it all began and were grateful that fate had brought us together. One day, when Sophia was already in high school, we decided to go on a trip to Europe. We took Sophia with us so she could see the world and experience other cultures. This trip became a real adventure for us. We visited Paris, where we climbed the Eiffel Tower and enjoyed views of the city. In Italy, we tried real Italian pizza and pasta, and in Germany, we walked around Christmas markets, where everything was decorated with garlands and lights. Sophia was delighted with all these new experiences and happily shared her emotions with us. Returning home, we realized that our family life had become even more eventful and interesting. We were grateful for every moment we spent together and knew that there were many more happy years ahead of us.